Hi, everybody. Welcome back to SaaS Founder Stories. My name is David Brennan, and today I have Fengmin with me, who is the CEO of MetaFoodX, co-founder. He's a multi-time founder, 5 companies so far, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
So let's kick it off. Tell me a little bit about MetaFoodX and what you guys are doing. It sounds like a pretty amazing product so far.
Great. Yeah, at MetaFoodX, we are really providing the first AI solution for food service operation management. Our solution actually allows the operators to prevent more than 90% of their food waste. In this process, our focus is really about the operation efficiency and sustainability. So our solution helps them to ensure food safety compliance and also making sure that they sustain a high profit for the operation.
That's cool. I was on the website and I just think what you guys are doing is pretty amazing. What's your origin story? How did you decide that this is the place you wanted to go?
Great question. And many people also ask me, right, given I'm a co-founder of Palo Networks along with four other for other company, right? The total, I mean, this is my fifth. For me, I was at a juncture, right, wanted to do something that have more impact, a larger impact, to be honest. So that was one motivation on my side. And then an opportunity for me to learn how bad the food waste problem is, just based on data in US, right? We are talking about from farm to table, nearly 40% of food get lost or wasted, and it's about $400 billion waste problem. From my tech background, have been building solution for enterprise, leveraging AI, leveraging IoT, different software technology, and that's where I figured, yes, I have the motivation. I can put together a team to really make an impact here.
It's cool. It's interesting to me because oftentimes you hear people say, "Well, this is my first time and it's so challenging." And then you see people like you that are doing it for their fifth time, and there has to be a pretty darn good reason for you to wanna start a fifth company. So that's really exciting. Prior to you sit and record here, you were kind of telling me a little bit about the challenge and how you guys actually decided what you were going to build. And I thought that was really interesting. Do you want to just kind of lay that out really quickly for us so that everybody understands how you got to where we are?
Oh, that's great. I mean, I'll kind of summarize this way, right? If you look at the food system sustainability, of course, it's a global challenge. One of the critical missing pieces from our analysis in addressing this challenge is actually effective management of demand and supply balance. Actually, that balance is a key to sustainability. Now, when we look at the food supply chain, of course, it's complex. But we realize that the food preparation and service is actually the messiest part, and it's a critical contribution to this problem. And it has been largely neglected by tech industry, actually. So in this case, as you also know, food service operation is chronically very low margin with intensive manual operation. So the pivotal moments for us, for MetaFoodX, has been refining that approach. We know the problem is real and worthy of our effort. So it's the approach get refined with the food operators. And then we actually focus on delivering the solution with the right form factor to actually get them started.
So I think that's the part that I think is really interesting because you and I were chatting before and you talked about like you knew the problem was real because you guys went in and you did the research and you actually did that. But then I love how you talk about the form factor part because that to me I was in a kitchen when I was 20 years old, and so I understand what it's like to be in that space, and I thought it was really neat because you hinted that you spent time deeply embedded with those teams to understand what type of solution would actually work for them. And that's such a cool thing to do. Can you tell us a little bit about how you created that environment that you could actually do that with the partners and companies that you found?
Yeah, and it's great. Quickly, just a few key kind of stages then give you a good idea how we were managing this. And when we started, we know we want to go to that group dining environment because that's where it's very challenging. And we find the first experimenting place actually is at a employee cafeteria of a hotel. Of course, it's a smaller scale because that employee cafeteria is small. We are definitely addressing more like buffet style setup. And so in that environment, yes, they really were very interested in knowing exactly how the food is being served and how much is prepared and how much was the leftover. That was a starting point. But when we worked there, we quickly also realized, that was a buffet environment, limited environment, yet it has its own challenge already. How do you know which food do they put the food always in the same place or not? But then also in the process, we also try to focus, right? Initially, we might do something, give feedback both to people are eating and also the operator. And we realize, to solve a problem, you've got to focus. And because the business problem is the first one, it's easier to approach and it's strong motivation. Then it says, okay, let's focus on solving a B2B problem first. So that was the one learning. And then that's when we decided to go work with the university dining environment because we were lucky enough to attract, right, a veteran from that space who has been doing operation responsible for P&L, have a lot of experience promoting, for example, manual cycle based food service management. And so that's where we got the strong endorsement in the validation of the problem. And he become our champion to work with the university community, the dining directors, the chefs, to really help us to say, okay, let's focus on and what our environment look like, what challenge we have, for you to have this solution really fit in. So that's how the process actually evolved. In this case, those university operators and executives really become our co-creator.
So when you say that, I think that's really interesting because when I think about that co-creator partnership, I think that's really the basis of any amazing product. Anytime that you can really build that, you have the ability to understand it in a way that other people that are your competition or are trying to solve the problem don't have. So I'd love to know from you, having done that and built those relationships, what's the thing you would teach other founders on how to open that environment? And then also, I think the next one is actually build that relationship and get them bought in to what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think yeah, you're absolutely right. Then whenever you try to solve a problem that is potentially deep impact, right, and in particular you are likely going to create a new category of a product. So that's where you've got to be ready because that process is going to be a lot more challenging than you just build, right, another software-based SaaS product. So in this case, once you validate, right, indeed the problem is real and people really want to see it solved. And this is where initially identifying the willing partners are willing to work with you to make this happen. So they also would have the realistic expectation, right? You're not going to look for them to pay you upfront or very early on. And it's solving the problem. And you both understand when you figure out this thing, the impact is going to be huge and we will both benefit. So that's that initial partnership commitment. And then that co-creation process indeed involves many rounds of iteration, right? From, idealization and to actually developing the product and then go to do the trial. And I would say, indeed, from a founder's perspective, going into this, then you have to be patient, mentally ready. So this is where you have to be. Indeed, people talk about how persistent you are, and you just combine with a lot of hard work. The other thing, of course, is managing, knowing this is a new high potential space, but it does not always align, or at least from an investor point of view, fit their sweet spot. right? Because investors have very different objectives. So there are good fundamental impact investors, and a lot of them come in the form of individuals and foundations, but not necessarily big institutions. So it's just, I think you have to set those expectations and be prepared.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation, especially when you're talking about the thing that jumped out to me there was you're like, yeah, and you can't expect them to pay. And I'm like, I have to have a conversation with you about how that went over with your investors, because that's like the first thing when you're raising capital that they're asking you when you're transitioning from the design partnership to the next step. They're like, yeah, but how come you're not monetizing? Or you know what I mean? There's
Yeah,
such a
yeah.
it's such an interesting one. So that's really cool. But I did before we go back, or I don't think we need to jump into the investor conversation. But the one thing that also jumped out at me that I thought was interesting, and I thought I'd run by you is when I we run design partners at Arkeo as well, so I'm really passionate about this, and I think it's really important for founders to understand how to do this and why it's so important to them and to get out early with a product and get these partners that can be part of it. For you, did you find that there was almost like a what we found is that there's lots of opportunity for partnership, but when you actually start to work with them, you quickly realize that they don't have the same problem that you were looking for, right? Like, and so did you find that was something that you came into, and how did you deal with it if you did?
Yeah, I would say we actually, it's interesting. There are a couple already. Some of them are really gems. I would say the first thing, let's see, when we look at this, when we were initially looking at the solution, of course, the waste, the visibility is one thing that we validated with the operation. They just lack of data, so they cannot do the right thing. So that has been consistent. That's something we validate and we stay all along, right? Something otherwise you end up maybe you're barking on a wrong tree or something. So that is a given. And then the question become, how in this process, what is their first focus or second focus, right? That's the one. In that process, we started with the food waste. We say, okay, it's the food left over. Let's see if you start on a buffet, right? And then buffet line, we see what at the end of the service period, what's left, we can track that easily. However, when we work with them, we quickly learned because they try to do the forecasting, making. So, of course, what come into the service line and go back is not the whole thing, right? They may have a bunch of pans and pots made in the warmer and the chiller. That could be also a big part. And that is all about their overproduction. So tracking of that part, right, is going to be different if you were strictly tracking using a 3D camera on the service line, right? So that was something quickly we learned. And then, of course, we evolved our solution factor. Actually, today, one of our key monitoring food consumption waste tracking is actually an IoT device that is portable. It does the quick 2-second scan, the net food weight, recognize whatever the food item, raw ingredient or the cooked food. We recognize it, we keep the net weight, and we take the temperature all through that 2-second scan. And that temperature part is not, at least originally, in what we thought of as food waste management. But later on, two things we learned. One, the chef started telling us so many different pans of different food they serve day in, day out, right, for this cafeteria environment. It's just a mess for people to keep up with temperature logs. Just not possible. So then they end up, they tried their best with pencil and binders. And still, they may get hit by the inspector. It's just not diligent enough. And then they will do the measurement and then something went wrong. So that was something we learned. The chef told us says this is very important to us. And when we had this portable mobile scanner, we did the innovation and we added integrated temperature sensors to actually deal with that issue. So those are the things that we know. There are things, and of course, this temperature tracking and alerting help them with food waste management as well, because they know when what food should be chilled per protocol and will not go to
Mm,
waste, yet go to
yeah.
repurpose or something. So yeah.
That's really cool. It's amazing the opportunities that come out once you actually start to talk to the customer. So we're almost done. And the thing that I always like to ask every guest at the end of the show is, what's one thing that our network could help you with going forward?
And thank you for asking that. Yes, I think for us, for what we are doing, I mean, one thing is more on the ecosystem, let's say from the food point of view, it's a solution integration up and down the supply chain. We actually have done a few great things with kitchen management software vendors because they realize we provide that data that makes their product work much better. So that was one, but we continue are going to go there, and along with folks working on Gen AI and the other solutions, because to us ultimately I believe intelligent machines is what we want to create for food service. And then the second one of course is on the go to market side. I think anyone in the ecosystem, we serve the same right customer base, and that would be great because it's all the time when you have an integrated solution, customer love it.
Perfect. Well, we will put it out there. And thank you very much, Fengmin, for coming on the show. I really appreciated talking to you and have an amazing day.
I have a great time. Thank you.